You're suspended indefinitely without pay. This could go on for a very long time. She smiled when she said it, leaned back in her chair like someone who just won something valuable. I watched her fingers drum against the wood between us, steady and satisfied. 3 years of covering her failures, absorbing her anger, staying silent while she humiliated me in meetings, all ending here in this moment with that smile. Can I have 4 hours to handle something first? Her eyebrows lifted. 4 hours? You're not getting paid anymore. Why would I give you personal matter, emergency, just 4 hours? She waved her hand, already bored with me. Fine. Goodbye. I walked out of her office. My legs felt strange. Not weak, not shaking, just strange, like they belonged to someone else. I heard her laugh as I reached the hallway, a short, satisfied sound that followed me all the way back to my workspace. Before we continue further, thank you so much for listening to this. I know your time is valuable, and I appreciate you being here. Drop a comment below and let me know where you're listening from. I love hearing from people all over the world. It reminds me I'm not alone in what happened next. My name is Daphne. I'm 31 years old, and before that day, I was the kind of person who kept my head down and did my work. Quiet, reliable, the person who showed up early and left late, the person who fixed problems before anyone noticed they existed. I lived alone in a small apartment with plants I somehow managed to keep alive, which felt like my only accomplishment outside of work some days. I didn't have a big social circle. Work consumed most of my energy, and by the time I got home each night, I barely had enough left to make dinner and water those plants. I wasn't always like this. When I started at the credentialing board 3 years earlier, I had energy, I had ideas, I thought I could make a difference. The board governed professional licenses for healthcare providers across our state. Doctors, nurses, therapists, everyone who needed official credentials to practice. We reviewed their applications, verified their education and training, and either approved them to work or denied them. It mattered. Real people's careers depended on our decisions. Real patients depended on those professionals being properly vetted. I believed in that work. My supervisor's name was Odette. She was 46, married to someone in state government, and had worked at the board for 12 years. When I first started, she seemed impressive, confident, decisive. She knew everyone's name, remembered details about their lives, asked about your weekend in a way that felt genuine. For the first 6 months, I wanted to be like her. Then I started noticing things. Small things at first. She'd give me a list of applications on Monday mornings. Don't process these yet, she'd say, sliding a paper toward me. Just names. Sometimes 5, sometimes 12. I'll let you know when to move forward with them. Why are we delaying them? I'd asked the first time. Her smile disappeared. Because I said so. Do your job and stop questioning me. I learned to stop questioning. Every Monday, a new list. Hold these applications. Keep them in the pending queue. Don't move forward until I tell you. The applications sat there, waiting. 1 week became 2. 2 became 4. Some sat for months while I processed hundreds of others around them. Why are we delaying this one? I'd asked once more, early on, about a nurse whose application had been sitting for 11 weeks. All her credentials checked out. Her background was spotless. Her education exceeded our requirements. There was no reason to wait. Odette had stood up from her chair and walked over to my workspace. She leaned in so close I could smell her perfume, something floral and too strong. Listen to me very carefully. I don't answer to you. You answer to me. When I tell you to hold an application, you hold it. When I tell you to process it, you process it. That's the entire scope of your decision-making authority here. Do you understand? I'd nodded. Good. Don't ask me again. I documented nothing. Kept no copies of those lists. But I have this strange skill where I remember names. Always have, since I was a kid. My mom used to joke that I could meet 100 people at a party and recall every single one the next day. So even though I didn't keep the lists, I remembered the names. Every single one. 43 people over 18 months. I watched their applications sit in limbo while Odette played whatever power game she was playing. I watched some of their temporary permits expire. I watched them unable to work because we hadn't approved their renewals. I watched their careers pause because Odette said so. And I did nothing, just held those applications and stayed quiet. 3 years of this. 3 years of absorbing her mood swings. Some days she'd be warm and friendly, buying coffee for everyone and complimenting my work. Other days, she'd find fault in everything. "This is sloppy," she'd say, throwing a file toward me. "Redo it." The file would be perfect. I'd redo it anyway, changing nothing, and submit it again. "Much better," she'd say the second time. She humiliated me in meetings. When the director asked about processing delays, Odette would say, "Daphne's been struggling to keep up lately. We're working on her time management skills." I processed more applications than anyone else on the team. Everyone knew it. No one said anything. She yelled at me behind closed doors. "You're incompetent. You're lucky I haven't fired you yet. I keep you around out of pity." Then, she'd open the door and smile at everyone outside like nothing happened. I took it all. Every insult, every humiliation, every lie. I told myself I needed the job. I had bills to pay, rent to cover. I couldn't afford to lose this income. So I stayed quiet and let her treat me like something she scraped off her shoe. That morning started normally. Monday. I arrived at 7:30 like always, made my tea, watered the small succulent on my workspace, pulled up the processing queue, and started working through applications. At 9:15, Odette appeared. "Come to my office." I followed her. She closed the door, sat down, and delivered those words with that smile. "Suspended indefinitely, without pay." This could go on for a very long time. She didn't give me a reason, didn't cite a policy violation or a performance issue, just suspended me and smiled about it. "Can I have 4 hours to handle something first?" I don't know why I asked for 4. Maybe because it was specific enough to sound legitimate. Maybe because I knew 4 hours was exactly how much time I needed. She agreed. She actually agreed. Waved her hand like she was doing me a favor and told me goodbye. I walked back to my workspace, sat down, stared at the monitor for maybe 30 seconds. Then I pulled up the processing queue. 43 applications. I remembered every name, every application that Odette had ordered me to hold. They were all still there, sitting in pending status, waiting for approval. Waiting for my approval specifically because I was the primary processor assigned to this category. What Odette didn't know, what she never bothered to learn because she was too busy playing power games, was exactly who those 43 people were. 17 of them were state compliance auditors, not regular healthcare providers. Auditors, the professionals who inspect credentialing boards like ours for regulatory violations. They ensure we're following proper procedures, processing applications fairly, maintaining appropriate timelines. When auditors get their licenses approved, they're added to the state's assignment rotation. Then, they get randomly assigned to inspect various boards. Odette had been delaying their applications for 18 months, keeping them frozen, unable to work, unable to be assigned. She knew once they got approved and entered the rotation, some of them would end up inspecting our board. She was deliberately keeping them in limbo to avoid scrutiny. I'd figured this out about 6 months ago. I'd been curious one day and looked up some of the names from her hold lists, started recognizing patterns, started understanding what she was doing, and I'd said nothing, just like I said nothing about everything else. But now I was suspended. Now I had 4 hours. Now I had nothing left to lose. My hands hovered over the keyboard. The suspension didn't start until I left the building. For the next 4 hours, I was still a fully authorized processor. I could still approve applications. Any applications. All of them. I clicked on the first name. The application opened on my monitor. All the required documents were attached. Education verified. Background check completed. Work history confirmed. Everything met standards. Everything had always met standards. The only thing missing was my final approval. I clicked approve. A small confirmation box appeared. Application processed. License activated. 1 down, 42 to go. I moved to the next name. Click, review, approve. The next one. Click, review, approve. My heart was beating faster, but my hands stayed steady. Each approval took about 2 minutes. I fell into a rhythm. Open, verify, approve, next. Open, verify, approve, next. "What are you doing?" I looked up. Odette stood in the entrance to my workspace area, holding coffee in a bright mug. She was staring at my monitor. "Processing my assigned work," I said. My voice came out calmer than I expected. "You gave me 4 hours. I'm using them." She stepped closer. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the screen. "Those applications. I told you to hold those. You suspended me, I said, not looking away from the monitor. I'm finishing my queue before I leave. Unless you want to explain to the director why you're preventing me from completing valid applications. Her jaw tightened. I could see her thinking, calculating. If she stopped me, she'd have to explain why. She'd have to admit she'd been ordering improper delays. She'd have to justify holding back applications that met every requirement. She couldn't do it without exposing herself. She turned and walked away. Her heels made sharp sounds against the floor, angry sounds. I kept processing. 17 applications approved in the first hour. My fingers moved faster. The system accepted every single one because they were legitimate. They'd always been legitimate. Hour 2. I opened my messaging system and sent one brief notification to the board's assignment coordinator. Her name was Vera, and she handled the automated rotation that assigned newly licensed auditors to their inspection schedules. My message was simple. All pending renewals processed and cleared. Queue empty and ready for new assignments. Standard notification. Nothing unusual. Something I sent every few weeks when I finished a batch. Vera would see the cleared applications, see the 17 newly approved auditors, and the system would automatically add them to the rotation. By tomorrow morning, they'd receive their assignment letters. 3 of them would be randomly assigned to audit our board. That's how the rotation worked. Random selection, standard procedure. I stared at the sent message for a moment, then I closed it and moved on. Hour 3. I pulled up personnel records. Public information for all board employees, accessible to anyone who requested it. I opened Odette's file. Hire date, credentials, performance reviews, salary history. One detail caught my attention, buried in last year's operational report. She'd listed me as her acting deputy to justify her salary increase. Acting deputy. That meant, in official documentation, I was her second in command. It meant my actions carried institutional weight. It meant when I processed those applications, I wasn't just a regular employee clearing my queue. I was the deputy completing outstanding work. I drafted a brief memo to the executive director, a man named Gordon, who I'd spoken to maybe 3 times in 3 years. Per my duties as acting deputy, I'm notifying you that I've completed all outstanding applications in the renewal queue before my departure. All processing delays have been cleared. The queue is current. I didn't mention Odette's orders, didn't mention the holds, didn't need to. The audit would find that. I sent it. Hour 4. I did nothing. Just sat there, waited. At 3:34 in the afternoon, Vera's automated assignment list published. It went to all department heads, all supervisors, all coordinators. Standard distribution. I opened it, scrolled through. There, 3 compliance auditors assigned to our board, starting tomorrow. Their inspection scope, processing timelines, and delay patterns over the previous 24 months. I felt something shift in my chest. Not satisfaction, exactly. Not joy. Something quieter than that. Something like the feeling you get when you finally set down something heavy you've been carrying too long. I logged out of my workstation, gathered my personal items. The succulent, a sweater I kept in my drawer, a mug with a chip in the handle. Everything fit in one small bag. Nobody said goodbye. A few people glanced at me as I walked toward the exit, but no one spoke. They'd watched Odette treat me like garbage for 3 years. They'd said nothing then. They said nothing now. I left the building at 4:07. The autumn air felt cooler than I expected. I walked to my vehicle and sat inside for a long time before starting the engine. Then I drove home, watered my plants, made dinner, went to bed, and waited. Tuesday morning, I didn't set my alarm. I woke up naturally around 8 and lay in bed staring at the ceiling. No job to go to, no income, no idea how I'd pay rent next month. I should have felt terrified. Instead, I felt light, empty, but light. I spent the day applying to other positions, updating my credentials, sending out messages to old colleagues. By evening, I'd submitted applications to 6 different organizations. I didn't expect responses quickly. These things took time. Wednesday, same routine. More applications, more waiting. I avoided checking news about the board, avoided looking at my work messaging account, just focused on moving forward. Thursday, my phone rang at 2 in the afternoon. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? Daphne? This is Gordon from the board. We need you to come in tomorrow morning. 9 o'clock. Human Resources will meet with you. My stomach dropped. Is this about Your suspension has been revoked immediately. We'll explain everything tomorrow. Please don't discuss this with anyone before the meeting. He hung up. I sat on my couch, holding the phone. Revoked. They were bringing me back, which meant something had happened. Something significant enough to override Odette's decision. The auditors had found something. Friday morning, I arrived at 8:45. The building looked the same but felt different, quieter somehow. I walked to the Human Resources office on the second floor. Gordon was there. So was the HR director, a woman named Paulette. So was someone I didn't recognize, a man in a suit who introduced himself as the state licensing authority's regional supervisor. "Sit down, Daphne," Gordon said. He looked tired. "We need to ask you some questions." They asked about the applications I'd processed my last day. They asked about Odette's instructions to hold them. They asked if I had documentation, messages, proof of her orders. "She used internal messaging," I said. "She'd send me lists every Monday. Hold these applications. Don't process until I tell you." Paulette pulled up something on a tablet. "We retrieved all internal messages between you and Odette over the past 18 months. We found 73 separate instructions from her ordering you to delay specific applications. Can you confirm you received these?" "Yes." "Did you know why she was ordering the delays?" I hesitated. "I figured it out eventually. Some of the names were compliance auditors. She was keeping them from being licensed, so they couldn't be assigned to inspect us." The regional supervisor leaned forward. "When did you figure this out?" "About 6 months ago." "Why didn't you report it?" I looked at him, really looked at him. "Because she would have destroyed me. She would have said I was lying, that I was the one causing delays, that I was incompetent. Who would you have believed, me or her?" Nobody answered that. Gordon cleared his throat. "The 3 auditors who arrived Tuesday reviewed our processing logs. They found 43 applications approved on your final day. Applications that had been sitting in delay status for an average of 8 months each. Then they pulled Odette's message history, every instruction she sent you, every order to hold applications without cause. 17 of those delayed applications belonged to state auditors," the regional supervisor said. His voice was flat. "She deliberately obstructed regulatory oversight by preventing auditors from being licensed and assigned. That's a criminal offense." My hands were shaking. I pressed them against my legs. "Where is she now?" "Terminated Thursday morning," Gordon said. "The state licensing authority revoked her credentials permanently. She can never work in credentialing again, anywhere in the state." Paulette was watching me carefully. "Daphne, did you know those 17 applications belonged to auditors when you processed them?" I met her eyes. "I knew some of them were auditors. I didn't know how many. I just processed everything in the queue because they were valid applications that met all requirements. That was my job." "And the memo you sent to Gordon," Paulette continued, "the one referencing your role as acting deputy. Why did you send that?" "Because it was true. Odette listed me as acting deputy in official documentation. I was completing my assigned work before my departure. I thought the director should know the queue was current." The regional supervisor smiled, just slightly, like he knew exactly what I'd done and respected it. "We're reinstating you effective immediately," Gordon said. "Full back pay for the days you were suspended. We're also opening a formal investigation into Odette's conduct. We'll need your cooperation as a witness." Of course, they let me go after that. I walked back to my workspace. Everything looked exactly how I'd left it. My succulent, my chipped mug, my sweater. Someone had watered the plant. I sat down, logged in, pulled up the queue. Empty, current, clean. I worked that day like any other day. Processed applications, answered questions. People avoided looking at me directly. They knew something had happened with Odette, but nobody asked. The silence felt comfortable. At lunch, I sat alone in the break area. One of my coworkers, a woman named Faye, who'd been there almost as long as Odette, sat down across from me. She didn't say anything at first, just opened her lunch container and started eating. "She told everyone you were being fired for incompetence," Faye finally said. "Monday afternoon, after you left. She said you'd been making serious errors and that the suspension was the first step toward termination." I nodded. "That sounded like Odette. I knew she was lying," Faye continued. "We all did. You're the best processor we have, but nobody said anything because..." She stopped, looked down at her food. "I'm sorry. I should have said something before. Years ago. It's okay. It's not okay. We let her treat you terribly because we were scared she'd turn on us too. I wanted to tell Faye it was fine, that I understood that fear makes people do nothing, but I didn't say any of that. I just nodded and finished my lunch. The weekend came. I tried to relax, tried to feel normal, but something felt unfinished. Odette was terminated, her credentials revoked. That should have been enough. She lost her career. She lost her power. She lost everything she'd built over 12 years. But I couldn't stop thinking about the 17 auditors, the ones she'd kept in limbo for 18 months. They'd lost income, lost opportunities. Some of them probably struggled to pay bills while their applications sat frozen because Odette wanted to avoid scrutiny. Monday morning, 1 week after my suspension, I arrived to find Gordon waiting near my workspace. "Can we talk privately?" he asked. We went to a small meeting room. He closed the door and sat down heavily. 5 of the auditors Odette delayed have filed formal complaints with the state attorney, he said. They're alleging abuse of public office. The attorney's office contacted us Friday. They're building a criminal case. I absorbed this. Criminal, not just administrative. She deliberately obstructed regulatory oversight. She prevented state auditors from doing their jobs to protect herself from inspection. That's a crime. The attorney believes they can prove intent. What does that mean for her? Gordon rubbed his face. Potentially jail time, more likely probation and permanent ban from public sector work. But it means her career isn't just over in credentialing. It's over everywhere. Government, administration, anything requiring public trust. I thought about that. Odette's entire professional identity was built on authority and power. Take that away and what did she have left? They'll want to interview you, Gordon said. As a witness, you don't have to agree, but it would strengthen their case. I'll do it. He looked relieved. Thank you. And Daphne, I'm sorry. I should have noticed what was happening. I should have protected you. Yes, you should have. He flinched but didn't argue. The state attorney's investigator called me 2 days later. We met at a coffee shop near my apartment. She was younger than I expected, maybe late 20s, with sharp eyes and a recording device she placed on the table between us. Tell me everything, she said. So I did. 3 years of humiliation, the delayed applications, the Monday morning lists, Odette's anger when I questioned her, the way she blamed me for delays in meetings while I processed more work than anyone else, the suspension, the 4 hours, the 43 approvals. Did you know processing those applications would trigger an audit? The investigator asked. I knew some of them were auditors. I knew approving them meant they'd enter the assignment rotation. I didn't know for certain our board would be selected for inspection. That part was random, but you knew it was possible. Yes, she smiled. Good, that's perfect. 3 weeks later, Odette's lawyer contacted the state attorney's office. She wanted to negotiate. She was willing to accept a plea agreement to avoid trial. The investigator called to tell me. She's terrified, the investigator said. Her lawyer knows. If this goes to trial, the evidence is overwhelming. 73 documented orders to delay applications, 17 of them belonging to state auditors. Your testimony about years of misconduct. She can't defend any of it. What are they offering? 2 years probation, permanent ban from public sector employment, restitution to every auditor she delayed, full amount of income they lost during the delay periods. I did quick math in my head. 17 auditors, average delay of 8 months. Even conservative estimates of lost income would be substantial. How much restitution? Preliminary calculation is around $90,000. I felt my breath catch. $90,000. Odette would have to pay $90,000 to the people she'd hurt. Money she probably didn't have. The attorney is recommending we accept the plea, the investigator said. It guarantees consequences without the risk of trial. She'll have a criminal record. She'll never work in government again. She'll be paying restitution for years. And she'll spend 2 years under supervision, knowing one mistake means jail time. What happens if we don't accept? If it goes to trial, we might win a longer sentence. Or a jury might be sympathetic to a middle-aged woman who made bad decisions at work. Trials are unpredictable. Accept the plea, I said. The agreement was finalized in April. 2 years probation, permanent ban from public sector work, restitution payments of $87,000 to 17 auditors, criminal record for abuse of public office. I didn't attend the hearing, didn't want to see her face, Didn't want to hear her apologize or cry or beg for leniency. The investigator sent me a summary afterward. Odette had stood in front of the judge and accepted responsibility. She'd cried. Her lawyer had argued she had children, a family, financial obligations. The judge had been unmoved. Your position carried public trust, the judge had said. You abused that trust to protect yourself from accountability. The harm you caused was significant and deliberate. This sentence is appropriate. 2 days after the hearing, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Hello? You knew. Odette's voice. Shaking. Barely controlled. You knew what would happen when you processed those applications. You knew they were auditors. I said nothing. My lawyer says I could face jail time if I violate probation. Do you understand that? One mistake and I go to jail. Because you decided to process applications you knew would destroy me. I processed valid applications, I said quietly. That was my job. I have children. I have a family. I'm losing my house because I can't pay the restitution and my mortgage. My husband is talking about divorce. My entire life is falling apart. Please, can't you tell them I didn't know? Can't you tell them it was a mistake? You smiled when you suspended me, I said. You told me it could last a very long time. You were happy about it. You gave me 4 hours, and I used them. That's all. She was crying now. Real, broken crying. Please, I'm begging you. Please help me. I'll apologize. I'll do anything. Just please. I hung up. I blocked her number. Deleted the voicemail she left immediately after. I didn't want to hear her beg. Didn't want to hear her cry. She'd had 3 years to treat me with basic human decency. She'd chosen cruelty instead. Now, she was experiencing what it felt like to be powerless. The restitution payments started in May. Odette had to pay $1,500 every month for the next 5 years. If she missed a payment, her probation would be violated and she'd face jail time. The state attorney's office sent me updates every few months. She was current on payments. Barely, but current. I heard through Faye that Odette's husband did file for divorce, that she'd sold her house and moved to a smaller apartment, that she was working retail at a store outside the city, making barely above minimum wage, that she'd lost all her friends, all her professional connections, all the status she'd built over decades. I felt nothing about it. Not satisfaction, not pity, nothing. I still work at the credentialing board. Gordon retired last year and they promoted me to operations director. I supervise 4 processors now. I make sure they understand that every application matters. Every person waiting for approval has a life, a career, a family, depending on that decision. We don't delay without legitimate cause. We don't hold applications because someone tells us to. We do the work right. The queue stays current, always. Sometimes I think about that moment in Odette's office. The smile on her face when she suspended me. The satisfaction in her voice when she said it could last a very long time. She thought she was ending me. Thought she was finally getting rid of the quiet woman who made her look bad by being competent. She gave me 4 hours. She thought 4 hours was nothing. Not enough time to matter. But 4 hours was everything. 4 hours to process 43 applications. 4 hours to clear a queue she'd been using as a weapon. 4 hours to let the system work the way it was designed to work. She destroyed herself. I just stopped protecting her from the consequences of her own actions. The system works when you let it. When you stop letting people obstruct it for power. When you process the applications that should have been processed months ago. When you let auditors do their jobs. When you document the truth and trust that evidence speaks louder than lies. Odette taught me something valuable. She taught me that cruelty always leaves evidence. That abuse of power always creates a trail. That eventually, if you give someone enough rope, they'll use it exactly the way you expect them to. She gave me 4 hours. I gave her justice. Before I go, thank you so much for listening to my story. If this resonated with you, if you've ever felt powerless against someone who abused their authority, please hit that like button. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe so you don't miss future stories. Your support means everything to me, and it reminds me that speaking the truth matters. Thank you for being here.